Hello and welcome to the Product Leadership 2021 Episode 3. Today I'm joined by Tarun Upaday. And before we start the talk on product leadership, I would just like to share a story on how I got introduced to Tarun. A few years back, I was looking for some advice from an investor's perspective on my entrepreneurial aspirations. And I got introduced to Tarun, and someone who connected us said that Tarun is the person who has never worked for anyone. And that statement kind of struck me, and I was really looking forward to meet Tarun. And yeah, since then we've been working together. And yeah, it's he's a charismatic person. He is uh, uh, a great product leader, entrepreneur, and investor. And I'm sure he has a lot to share. Tarun, thank you for joining me on this talk series. And please tell us a little bit more about yourself. Just before you share, I just thought that this would be a great way to start and set the tone for who you are. All over to you.
Yeah, no, I don't think that not ever working for others is necessarily a great thing. I think there are certainly some downsides, but there are a lot of upsides to that, and I sorely miss actually not working for somebody else, and there are things that I miss in my skill set because of that. Yeah, but when I met you, it was. I think our first meeting was very warm, and you struck me as somebody who's very passionate about not just business and entrepreneurship in general, but also about travel. And that's always one of the biggest qualities in a person. I almost never try to hire somebody who does not have a passion for anything. In every interview, I kind of look for what is this person passionate for, and because if all you do is just live normally, then it makes for a boring life at the end of the day.
Yeah. uh, Thank you, Tarun. I think you are being very modest, and I appreciate the kind words. Um, but if we talk about you, you've been involved with many different projects and companies. So probably we can talk about one thing is BluVentures. So you've been involved with them, and I know you have invested in many companies and had successful exits as well. Can you give us a little bit of insights on what kind of companies or industries you invest in, and how do you go through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Blue Ventures is an early tech fund, which means that invest in tech companies which are very early in their career. Usually before Series A, so they almost always write the first check for a company, and I've been involved with them for many years now. And over these years, my responsibility and involvement has grown. Currently, I'm on the investment committee for their cyber uh, fund, and there we mostly invest in cybersecurity related companies. So that has become my focus more and more in these days. And but I do stay involved in other companies as well. Uh, I like to say that the successful people have come in three varieties. They are either good operators, or they are good investors, or they are good entrepreneurs or and innovators. So I think I started as a good entrepreneur and innovator. I like to think, but over last few years, I'm turning more and more towards being an investor, and I think I'm seeing more success there. So I feel very excited and hopeful about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good to hear. Transitioning from entrepreneurship, tech leadership, and then moving on to the investment. And I'm sure being an investor is also not an easy job. You have to be very careful on how you put in your money. Uh, into any particular company or industry or business. So what is it in particular that you really look for in a company before you decide to invest in?
So great question. I don't think that's there is a super secret formula there. I think one has to look for one's own niche and one's own knowledge base. So in my case, because I focus on early stage companies, I very strongly focus on excuse me, the market and then the team. So the market part is obvious, very obvious that one should look at a market which has above a certain size, so that any new company has a place to grow. The opportunity should be right, and this should be the right time to invest or innovate in that market. And the second side of that is the team itself. So a team is usually 2 to 4 people, and what's that founding team like? What's the relationship with each other, and what kind of skill sets they bring to the table. That's all really one has to go for, and then that has to be combined with what I know about that industry or that stage of that type of companies, and that's really goes into the decision.
Okay. So team is a great way to look at things. Like I believe um, the dynamics, team dynamics, obviously brings in more success in terms of like how you are working together to come to the market. Uh, when we are talking about like tech products companies, what is it in specific that you really want to see in those people, like how their product. So product is one thing which can speak to the market, but do you think there is more to it in the team in terms of how they handle the product?
Yeah. So beyond the relationship within the team itself, which is very important. The team should have a certain amount of trust, mutual, friendship, as well as ability, some kind of supplemental skills in the team. Uh, Beyond that, uh, when we look at each person individually in the team, I think there are many sides that need to come together, especially when we look at product companies in the tech industry. I think there are 5 skills that together define success. First will be having a great design taste. Number 2 will be business insights or ability to make good business decisions. Third, which is becoming increasingly more important in today's data focused world, is strong analytical skills. Fourth, which is almost always a wild card, is some kind of a visionary or some kind of a strategic take on the industry, product, or business, which is hard for other people to copy. And lastly, a deep technical expertise. So any team has to have all those 5 ingredients in a tech product to make it work. Now, that doesn't mean that all 5 have to be present when the company starts, but whatever is not present is a gap, and over a period of time, company has to get to all 5 for it to be successful at the end of the day.
Okay. So interesting way of putting the skills in the 5 main things. Uh, do you think this is a one-person job or it's a team job?
Uh, it can be a one-person job. I mean, it's very hard to do it as a one person. I think 2 people can probably and do it, and it is. And a lot of time we see 2 people doing it. 3 is much more common, and but there is a law of diminishing return that fits in. I think beyond 3 or 4, it certainly fits in. So 2 to 4 might be the ideal set. The more complementary these people are, the better it is. You certainly don't want uh, than sort of working together. I mean, there are obviously more skills beyond these five that you want in your team, but there are soft skills and things that can be learned. But there are certain things which are just innate, and while they can be learned, I won't bet on people learning them. Something like having a great design taste is something that can be learned over a period of time by reading books and experience and interest, but it's not something that I'll bet on, when that people will learn it over a period of time.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. I think, yeah, in an early stage company, especially having the complementing skills is very important. You have limited resources and you have to manage everything within that. So if the skills are complementing, that can help take things further, faster, and more efficiently. Yeah. Now, if we talk about the current times, as you know, the pandemic has impacted a lot in many different businesses. And if we talk about the startups, what has changed in the startup team dynamics? Do you see anything changing, or not much because the team is anyway small?
It certainly has. I mean, if you look at um, the new world which is emerging in after pandemic, I will say now every business is a digital business. Uh, Whether you cut hair or water plants or run a restaurant, you are in a digital business. And I'll go a step beyond and say that every relationship is a digital relationship now. So whether it's the grandparents or a little child, uh, now every relationship goes through a screen. And we can debate the positives and negatives of it. But staying on the topic, the challenge for today's founders and today's products are that to create the digital strategy regardless of what business you are in. Now, these changes were happening even before pandemic, but in post-pandemic world, we kind of have fast forwarded 5, 10, 20 years, depending on what industry we are talking about. In terms of what you asked, the team dynamics has changed dramatically in COVID, and what is traditionally called the role of a product management has become really, really important. And just like every business is a digital business and every relationship is a digital relationship now, I will say every person in an organization is now a product manager in some way, or the person has to have certain attributes of product management as part of their job description. In my view, one of the key jobs of a product manager is to coordinate and communicate what the company's product is doing, both internally and externally. And that job has become very, very hard during pandemic. I mean, internally, the teams are distributed. Externally, the customers are distributed. Everything happens over um, different channels than it used to happen. People are working remotely, perhaps in different time zones. So the job of coordination and communication is way harder for the traditional product managers and product owners, but also for everyone else in the company who has a stake in getting the product out of the door and making it successful. So that I believe is the key challenge uh, for both upcoming companies and companies who are trying to move forward in this digital world in any other way.
Right. Yeah, I like the perspective of saying that every relationship is now digital and every company is actually doing a digital business. And then also talking about the distributed teams and distributed customers, they pose its own challenge. Um, but what would be your advice to such founders who are trying to come up, or maybe who are already working on transitioning to a place where they can cope with these challenges? What is your advice to them?
So I think the value when the team company is small, it's easy to communicate. But once we get past the initial size of, let's say, five, communication immediately becomes a challenge. And now that people are separated by distances, if not by technology, the this number from five has probably come down. Uh, so I one thing that I look for, and one thing I advise everyone is that do not underestimate communication in this world. And it doesn't mean over communicate, but be always aware that communication is going to be challenging. And it is about keeping everyone, even if it's a small team, keeping everyone on the same page and making sure whether it is sprints or scrums or some brainwaves and whiteboarding session, or informal internal debates on features, or formal communication to the customers. Every part of the communication is now harder, and it is much harder to do and like a debate about a bug, how a bug should be fixed informally over a coffee in company cafeteria or in a Starbucks. But it is also hard to talk to your customers and understand what they are thinking in their strategy. So every company has to be really innovative, along with not just in their product, but also on how they communicate internally and externally with all their stakeholders. And that's a job that is still evolving, and we will see it evolving more. Uh, but there are certain trends that are emerging there. I mean, technology can help there, but technology comes with its own limitations. And some things technology makes it easier to do, but certain things are much harder to do. And every team has to be aware of what are the limitations uh, along with the power of these new tools.
Right. Yeah. I think talking to a couple of product leaders now, I'm kind of realizing the theme of communication being important in product leadership or in general in business itself. So there are many themes that are coming along. So one is like product managers inherently are good communicators, or they have to be good communicators because they don't really have an authority, but they have to influence changes that work positively for the customers and the company itself. So it's in a way kind of very interesting to see that this theme is coming along as a common piece of advice for the product leaders to work on the communication. Even if it's a remote world, there are different tools available which can help in improving the communications. Yeah. Uh, Beyond that, if we just kind of go a little higher up and see the decision making process, now that has also changed a lot. Uh, Previously, it was very easy to make decisions. Everyone would, I mean, the key stakeholders would come on the whiteboard, they will jot down certain ideas, then they will vote for it or do sticky notes uh, for it. And then it was easier to make a decision in like maybe 20 minutes of brainstorming session. Now, being remote, it is not the same. People are not able to share the same whiteboard. So the decision process has also changed. Uh, how are you giving advice on that aspect as well? Like, how would you make decisions, better decisions, and what are the things that a product leader should look for to make a better decision?
So great question, Anup. I'll actually make it a little bit more complicated. You talked about how decision making supporting process and tools are sometimes not available, or are limiting because we all cannot be in the same room around the same whiteboard. That's certainly very true. I will add though that uh, the data is changing. A lot of time, products managers and even company executives are used to making decisions based on data. Now, that sometimes is very hard data coming from the market or from the market research, and sometimes it is soft data, which can be sentiment analysis or subjective analysis of what people are perceiving outside. The challenge is that data has changed. Both of those type of data has become very different. What people used to buy or prefer before pandemic has changed. So one has to think about what data would be relevant. Similarly, the sentiments that people have changed, and what they feel about different things have changed. So what things were considered good, like wearing a suit, has changed dramatically in this world. So, and it will continue to change as we when we get out of this. So uh, so I'll mix both of those together. I think the the flexibility around processes and tools, as well as around data and sentiments, needs to be put in the context of the larger business goals. So it goes back to communication in some ways in terms of how to do more, but then also to have a little bit of discipline around how can we get people together uh, to build and understand which part of what's our goals. So to put it another way, in a regular business enterprise, a lot of our decisions are made by what I would call habits, which means we have a certain way of working which has been institutionalized over last 50 to 100 years. We gather around a coffee machine, we talk about certain things, we have, we read a certain kind of Twitter streams, we sit in a certain kind of coffee shop, and we have drinks and do some research. And that's how the informal opinion gets made, and that opinion gets then ultimately get formalized in meetings based on certain kind of data and certain kind of discussions that take place, and then that percolates up the organization or down based on the organization culture. Now that this way of making decisions and understanding or steering the business is being threatened to this process. It is an opportunity to build something new, but it's also a threat that the older ways of companies or people who continue to stick with the older ways might not be as successful. We don't know what the new way would be. I think it will take a few years for even us to get some initial answers there. But meanwhile, the people who are going to be most successful are people who are focusing on looking for these things, but are also actively communicating and getting feedback in whichever way they can get out of this group. So one has to constantly be validating what other people are getting, but then also using data to communicate and using communication to get data. So what I mean by that is when I communicate something to my team, I use data to see that did it actually get communicated or did I miss something, or having some processes around getting that communication in will be helpful. So ultimately it comes down to having enough flexibility, formality, as well as, I guess we come back to the same theme again and again, communication. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's
Sorry, I got yeah, rambled a little bit over around there.
yeah. You've been known for putting things simple, but you put the complicated thing in a very simple way, and I think it's very easy to understand your perspective on seeing like how the loss in informal communication is in a way threat to the modern, I would say, a modern decision making process. And in current times, people will have to be little flexible and ensure that they are communicating the data they are getting, and make sure that they are doing the communication to get the data as well. It's a kind of a very interesting perspective. I mean, it is definitely sounds complicated, but you are put in a very nice way to help people understand. Uh, In the audience, I'm sure there are many founders, entrepreneurs, and upcoming product leaders. If you have to give them one advice to wrap this conversation, what would that be?
I will say the biggest thing that today's upcoming entrepreneurs and product leaders can look for is what part of my business or what a part of the opportunity I'm trying to look at is not digitized, and how can I digitize it more. And what I mean by that is there are opportunities of digitizing everywhere, even in the businesses that think they are fully digitized, and which most businesses are not. So every product leader should think about what can I digitize, what am I not missing, what can go remote, which it is not, and you will find an opportunity for a new business right there.
Right. So look for new opportunities and make sure you are digitizing everything that is possible. Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Tarun. I think it was a wonderful conversation, and you brought in a very great perspective on how things are changing, evolving. Although there are threats uh, to decision making process in the current times, the traditional way of working has an opportunity to kind of evolve itself to cater to the current times. It was wonderful talking to you, Tarun, and I'm really thankful you were able to share some time with me. I know you are a busy man.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.